I'm Nathalie, and I work for the RIPEness, and I still have trust. They asked me to do a presentation 2 years after World IPv6 launch. Are we there yet? Is the title. And I think that's a bit of a silly question. Are we there yet? Are we where? Where are we? I think that's the only question we can answer. Where are we? So let's get started. The IPv6 world launch was already 824 days ago. And that's a lot. We have done a lot since. We've done a lot of talking, and we've done a lot of measuring. But what's going on behind the doors of the different network operators about the ISPs, content providers, transit providers, etc. So for this presentation, I started looking at, okay, what has changed? Where are the changes? And who is deploying IPv6? Where are they geographically? Where is happening what? And what have we seen? And the first set of graphs, I didn't want to bring yet another Google graph. We all know the Google graph, you know, with the different countries, etc. I didn't want to bring that one, because that one's obvious. I did want to shine a light on a bit of a project that APNIC did, our sister organization in the Asia Pacific, with Jeff Houston and his team, research and development, where they actually used Google Ads in Java and Flash of 1 pixel to use web browsers to see if a web browser used IPv4 or IPv6 and what it preferred. And with that, you get a lot of samples in. So if we look at the global picture, you see that, oh, I have to explain something. This ridiculously large number is a percentage to an incredibly large accuracy. So it basically says 3.6 something percent. Of the end users is capable of IPv6. And that's more or less the same as we see with Google. That matches that number, kind of, sort of. So that's what we see globally. And you see the graph actually still going up. So that's a good thing. You see it going down sometimes. You see it going up overall. Now, if we zoom in a bit, I'm going to zoom in quite a bit. We see Europe. And it's doing slightly worse, well, worse by some extent, 3.17%. And that is an average percentage, basically. So it looks at the grand scheme and it takes an average. If you look, for example, at America, it would be 10%. And so Europe is a bit behind that. But if we look at Western Europe, things look different. And there you have it. Western Europe looks pretty good. And pretty good, 10%. But still. And you see the line there is more steady on going upwards. So on average, 10% of the users is IPv6 capable in Western Europe. Now, I'm going to zoom in one bit more. Sorry. GB. Yeah. So that's the last I'm going to do about that. You see also the graph is more going up and down over the whole line. That's because we get the sample points in, the samples in. Yeah, with that small percentage, you see the differences, of course, a bit quicker. So it's going up and it's going down. At that point, on the 6th of September, when I made the slides, 0.18%. But as Veronica said, the transit providers are ready. A lot of content is ready. So this is strictly end users talking. So no, IPv6 did not happen everywhere. Some economies, I will zoom in on that a bit later on, have been very active. And I want to take you on a ride and look at this country by country basis, because this is where it gets interesting. If we look at the world rankings, Belgium, you see leading the top. And the story of Belgium is really interesting. I went to their IPv6 task force last year around this time, September, end of August. And it started with 2 very small operators. You saw that in the Netherlands as well, as Timo will talk about that later. 2 small providers, and they didn't make a significant number. But when I was in the IPv6 task force meeting in Belgium, there were two operators there, the two large ones, the incumbent, Belgacom, which does ADSL, and you had Telenet that does the cable. They were both there, and they both had a similar approach to switch on IPv6 for their end users. They did their in-house staff trials, and they've been sending around, for every time a new customer came, they've been sending it an IPv6 capable CPE already for a year or two, 2.5, by that time last year. But they weren't doing IPv6 yet, just investing already in an IPv6 capable CPE for the new customers. And this is where it got a bit different between Belgacom and Telenet. One of the providers shipped an old type modem in case a customer called and said that their old modem was broken. So they sent a version 2 modem instead of a version 3. This was not DOCSIS, by the way. The other party did send a version 3 type of CPE, so a new CPE, if a customer complained that the old one was broken. So two different approaches. But both of them did a presentation at the Belgium IPv6 Task Force last year and said, we're both going to do a trial with customers of a fixed number, 15,000, both did that. And if the help desk calls are not increasing, then we know we have a go. Because that was the major criterion, not to have more help desk calls, because those are expensive. So actually, that's where we saw IPv6 going in Belgium. They were battling who was the first to roll out the 15,000 customer trial. So they were battling on a date, actually, on the Belgium IPv6 task force. So that was funny to see. They were both equal in January, flipping the switch. And as of January, we saw an increasing steep line of Belgium IPv6 deployment because they were rolling out big time. So that's how you can see we're a small country with two battling ISPs for IPv6 were going on. They both claimed that the number of help desk calls didn't increase significantly, so that was good. Then Luxembourg is second. Well, you can see Luxembourg is on the second place, but they're quite small as well, much smaller actually than Belgium. And this was the incumbent switching on IPv6 for new customers. This is dual stack. Then Switzerland, well, you might have heard that Swisscom is rolling out 6RD to this is a transitioning mechanism, to their customers, to their existing customers. So it's a tunneling mechanism. So it's basically the same as France, as Free does. And it looks very good in the statistics, but it's basically still tunneled. It's not native v6, but okay. Then Germany, Deutsche Telekom. Oh, Switzerland, another one. I was at a Swiss IPv6 conference, also end of last year, sitting in my hotel room, opening my laptop. And what I always do in a hotel room is check if I have v6. It's never the case, but you never know. And much to my surprise, in my Swiss hotel room, I had IPv6 of a very small provider. And I posted it on Twitter, etc., because I was really excited about it. Completely random small boutique hotel in Switzerland, IPv6 to their customers. So very nice. Then Germany, Deutsche Telekom, and also Cable Deutschland, if I'm correct. They're also doing IPv6. You see the numbers there are pretty high. And then the US. The US is going massive at the moment with different deployments of T-Mobile, Comcast, Time Cable, Warner, what's the other one? Verizon, yeah. So they're rolling out IPv6 quite massively. Also with transitioning mechanisms, by the way, here and there. A lot of help from 464 XLAT, etc. So they're going pretty quick. Romania, that's also an interesting case. Romania had RCS, RDS, and they went up pretty quick with their IPv6 end user numbers. And then it started going down again. And that was odd. That seemed odd, that an internet provider was going up for quite a while and then was going down. So I sent them an email, asked what was going on. And what they did was they sent out basically a CPE to their customers that was IPv6 capable. that could do IPv6, but a lot of customers didn't like that CPE because it was blocking certain things and didn't work according to their standards. So they replaced it with their own CPE that didn't do IPv6. So that was a bit unfortunate for them. So they were discussing with customers what they could do to improve their CPEs. And now they're going up again. So that's all very good. France, like I said, that's free. Again, 6RD, a tunneling mechanism. And they've been quite steady for a long time. But they were one of the first big deployments of V6 in Europe. And then the odd one here is actually Peru, the PE. Because in the rest of South America, you don't see much IPv6 there. And then suddenly there's Peru, and Peru is growing. And if anybody knows the story about Peru, I'm really eager to hear it. I have no idea. So there's not much to find on the internet about that, or I haven't met them. GB, not surprisingly, it's a bit lower, didn't fit in the, on the slide. But hopefully next year, I heard BT is going to do it next year, so next year, going up in the graphs. Like I said, this is all based on the APNIC measurements and the stories people tell at different conferences about how they are doing things and why. So this is the map that the APNIC guys use. As you see, there are some white spots on the world map. And I asked Jeff, what was that about? Because is there no internet or something else going on? For example, the one in Africa, that's Chad. And they didn't have enough sample points from browsers in Chad. I think the threshold is 50 samples. So they didn't reach that in Chad. Anyway. Now, looking at some statistics closer to home and not looking at the end users, that's the AS numbers. So if you look at the region, the amount of AS numbers, and then look at the percentage of those AS numbers that announce V6 prefixes, you get a bit of a chart like this. I looked at the different regional internet registries. And as you can see, APNIC is leading at the moment with 21% of all the AS numbers in the APNIC region that do IPv6. Now, RIPENCC, I think, in a month or two, will be topping that. Although RIPENCC has a much higher number of AS numbers than the APNIC region. If you look up the actual numbers, like I said, this is a percentage. So it's not really that reflective in that sense. LACNIC, making some big jumps there. And as you can see, AFRINIC, in relative terms, is doing better than ERIN. Sounds odd, but the number of AS numbers in Africa is quite low. So every time one AS number starts to announce IPv6 prefixes, it gives a big bump up. So that's how it's... So I brought this graph also back a bit to the UK and to the region. And you see that Ireland is actually leading in the number of IPv6 announcements. Now, again, relative, of course, because the number of AS numbers subscribed to Ireland is much less than it is in the mainland. So that's how you look at statistics, you know. You have to know this information to make an assumption based on it. And then there is a blue line. See if you can spot it. It's the British Virgin Islands. I thought, well, I'll include them in the stats, see what happens. So GB is still doing much better than that. You suppose? Yeah. So, yeah, not much happening in the British Virgin Islands, although we have quite some members there. Then I looked at the AS numbers in Great Britain that are in that list, who do actually announce V6. And I saw some interesting things there. Andrews and Arnold, are they in the room? No. Well, actually, you have a look at the number of samples. It's really small. But again, so it's relative. So the percentage is really high. But I tried to get as much in there in the slide as I could. And BSkyB is there, for example, with really a little bit of IPv6 capability there, but the amount of samples is quite high. So I hope to see that jumping up quite quick once they roll out IPv6. Yeah, it's a bit too, I think it's a bit too small for in the room to read. Anything else interesting there? Well, Janet, of course, has been there already for a while. Flag Telecom is there. This is the AS number. So from this graph, basically, all the AS numbers that are registered to a country that announce V6 prefixes. And then I started looking at them. Okay, who are those AS numbers? And how much IPv6 do we see are they announcing? So that's that. Oh, okay.
Can I dive in, Nathalie? Well,
yeah.
I think what you're saying is for the people that do announce V6 in this last slide, of the V6 they announce how much of it is reachable on
exactly.
V6.
Yes.
That's the distinction.
Yes. Sorry.
Okay. Right.
Sorry. Language, yes. So then we have our own statistic. And this is a very simple statistic. This is our RIPEness program. We've been doing that already for a few years, give or take 5 years. We look at the total number of members that we have in our region. And then we measure 4 things, really. If they have an IPv6 prefix, they get 1 star. Then you can get other stars if you announce your prefix, the global routing table, if you set up a route object, and if you have a domain object. If you have those 4 stars, we'll ship you a t-shirt for you and your team. And yeah, you're laughing, but it was very effective, and we promote it in our training courses. It's a lot of fun. I saw some t-shirts earlier in the conference here as well. So as you can see, 21% of the right population, basically, the right member base, I should say, has 4-star RIPEness. We have seen the number of 1-stars growing quite significantly, and that also could have something to do with the RIPE policy that says that you have to have an IPv6 allocation before you can get your last IPv4 prefix, your last /22. So we see a lot of increase in the 1-star, and then things are stopping. So looking at the UK, you see exactly a similar picture. You see quite a number of 1-star LIRs who have an allocation, and then, yeah. But if you don't have 4 stars yet, just set up, probably it's your domain object that you haven't set up yet. Set it up, drop me an email, happy to send t-shirts. This doesn't say anything about what people are doing behind closed doors on the deployment of IPv6. These are just administrative measures, so to say. Now, when I was looking at all these different measurements, I dropped into Eric Finke's measurements, and this one made me laugh. Eric Finke basically does samples of, he looks at the Alexa top, I think 100 in a certain country, and checks if they have DNS over IPv6 available, if they have mail over IPv6 available, Quad A records, etc. And when I looked at email, this one made me laugh, because Libya, Azerbaijan, and Vietnam were ranking the top. And then I started looking at, okay, this is weird. They're not in any other statistic dominantly available, so what's going on? And I found out that these countries make a lot of use, well, their Alexa domains at least, make use of Google Mail. And Google Mail does IPv6. I don't know why. I talked to some people asking why they would do that, and some people told me it's because of the reliability of Google Mail is better than having it in their local place. But at least they're also, a side advantage for them is, well, it does also IPv6. Then we did a survey. Every year we do a survey with the NRO about why are people not doing IPv6. And you see a shift in that in the last few years. Still the biggest one, surprisingly, 2014, is I don't see the business needs right now. And I don't get that. If you know the prices of an IPv4 address, when does it become a business case? So I'm really curious about I don't see the business case now for IPv6. What's going on there? Still a big one, we heard it before, vendors. Our infrastructure doesn't support IPv6, although that went down quite a lot in the last year. And then the priorities, of course, I haven't got it around it yet. That's also still a big one. And the ISP. The ISP doesn't support IPv6. That's a pity. And all the rest, of course, little bits and pieces, cannot afford the expense, the management, the requirements, etc. But the business case, that was a bit of a shock to me. Then when you ask people about, okay, what would be your bumps along the way? Where do you see the issues going? You see the costs as a number one. The required financial investment and the time of staff. And this is an interesting one. You have to train staff. And with that, I want to plug our training course that we're doing actually in this venue up there on Wednesday, Thursday and Friday. Basic and Advanced IPv6 course. It's free for members, but we want to make an exception also for the delegates here. If you have any support staff here based in Belfast, and you want to send them to an IPv6 training course for free, call them in the coffee break. Have them come over tomorrow. We start at 9:30. We're happy to have them. Come talk to us and we'll sign them up. So take me up on that offer. Availability of knowledgeable staff, so we have to work on that quite a lot. And again, we have to make sure that we have to talk to the business, to the decision makers. Still a lot of work to be done there. So, summing the whole story up, large network operators are actually rolling out IPv6 in other countries. They're working behind the scenes here and there. And they make significant differences in the number of statistics. A lot of organizations still don't see the business case. That's odd. And you can use external services to enable IPv6. Apparently Google Mail works with IPv6. And the training is still much needed. So, that brings me to an end. And happy to take any questions.
Hi Nathalie, Jim Reid, RTFM. You mentioned earlier on that there's a lot of low values for the RIPEness statistics, and that might be related to the fact that we're in V4 run-out. Have you any kind of numbers on the number of new members that have come along since the new V4 policy was introduced and they're actually getting V6 in order to get V4?
They don't have to provide us with a reason to ask for that.
Yeah, not so much from the justification point of view. That's obviously what they might be doing, but I think the way we probably find that out is that of those new LIRs who have got a V6 allocation as a side effect of applying for some V4 space, are those V6 allocations being routed, or was that just something that was thrown in as a freebie in order to get V4?
Yeah, it's very difficult to get those exact numbers because you would have to ask them about it. But gut feeling and just looking at numbers, yeah. Yeah,
but surely this information should be available one way or another, because you can see if the routing prefixes have been announced for those V6 allocations, and it should be a simple matter of just doing a sort and merge.
Yeah, no, I agree.
Simple matter of programming, yeah. But you don't have the data yet?
No, I don't.
Okay, thanks.
Okay.
I'm actually a colleague from Nathalie. I did those statistics about a year ago, and what you get is something similar to what you find in the RIPEness. So about it was 20% in the RIPEness about a year ago with one allocation. Yeah. Well, with 4 stars, it was about 20% of the allocations that were actively announced on the internet. But what I checked was just the exact prefix. So it might be that some of them could have been deaggregated, anything. So I took just one day an example of the routing table and checked it against the delegated file that we have at the RIPEness CC that we provide to everybody. Yeah. So I have that. I still have the script. I can run it if you want to have a new statistic.
I'd be interested.
So, okay.
Thanks.
Thank you.
More questions? Okay, thanks.